The crystal flutes chimed as Vivian tapped hers with a silver spoon, drawing everyone's attention in our family's oak-paneled dining room. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls. My brother Ronan beamed at her, completely enchanted. "I'd like to propose a toast," Vivian announced, her voice carrying that practiced softness that always set my teeth on edge. "To my new family, especially to my future sisters-in-law." Her gaze lingered on Ivy and Tessa, who sat rigid in their chairs. "I know some of us still have a lot of growing up to do, but I'm here to help guide you into becoming proper young ladies." Ivy's shoulders hunched forward, while Tessa's knuckles went white around her water glass. I caught Mom's pleading look from across the table, her silent request for peace at this engagement celebration. Dad just stared ahead, focused on maintaining appearances as always. "Speaking of guidance," Vivian continued, her smile never reaching her eyes, "I've already spoken to Sterling Daddy about sponsoring some finishing school programs that could really help. I think they're perfect exactly as they are." I cut in, raising my own glass. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop myself. "To Ronan and Vivian." A heavy silence fell over the table. Ronan shot me a warning look, but Vivian's mask slipped for just a moment, long enough for me to catch the flash of hatred in her eyes. As servers cleared the plates, Vivian cornered me by the butler's pantry. "You really should be more careful, Celia," she murmured, checking to ensure we were alone. "Especially given what I know about your family's situation with Daddy." "What are you talking about?" She patted my arm with false sympathy. "Oh, you don't know? How interesting. Well, I suppose some secrets are better left buried. For everyone's sake." With a final meaningful look, she glided back to Ronan's side, leaving me frozen in place. I watched her whisper something in my brother's ear that made him laugh, while Ivy and Tessa sat forgotten at the far end of the table. Whatever game Vivian was playing, she'd just made a crucial mistake. She'd given me a reason to start digging. The morning after the engagement party, I found Mom in the garden, methodically deadheading roses with trembling hands. She'd always retreated here when things got difficult, finding comfort among her carefully tended flowers. "I saw how Vivian spoke to your sisters last night," she said, not looking up. "I should have said something, but you didn't." The words came out harsher than intended, and I softened my tone. "Why are you letting her treat them like this?" Mom's scissors snipped another dead bloom. "Your father thinks this marriage will secure everyone's future. And Ronan seems so happy. Does he?" I moved closer, watching her face. "Because the brother I know wouldn't let anyone talk to Ivy and Tessa that way." She finally met my eyes, and I saw fear there. "There are things you don't understand, Celia. Financial matters that—" She caught herself, pressing her lips together. "What financial matters?" The garden gate creaked, and Ronan appeared, his usual easy smile replaced by something tighter. "Mom, Vivian's here. She wants to discuss wedding flowers." Mom quickly gathered her tools. Of course." She hurried inside, leaving me alone with my brother. "You need to stop," Ronan said quietly. "Stop what?" "Caring about our family? Stop trying to find problems where there aren't any. Vivian's father is investing heavily in Dad's business. This marriage means everything to our family's future." I felt the pieces starting to click together. "Is that why you proposed? Because of Sterling Kane's money?" Something flickered across Ronan's face. Pain, maybe guilt, before his expression hardened. "You always think you know what's best for everyone. But you don't know everything, Celia. Stay out of it." He turned to leave, but I spotted something falling from his pocket, an envelope, weathered and creased. I snatched it up before he noticed, tucking it away as Vivian's laugh echoed from inside the house. Later, alone in my old bedroom, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated 15 years ago, addressed to Dad from Sterling Kane. The first line made my blood run cold. "Regarding the terms of our arrangement and your outstanding debt." My fingers flew across the keyboard, digging through years of digital records in Dad's business files. The old letter from Sterling Kane had mentioned specific dates and amounts, and working in finance had taught me where to look for hidden transactions. Each discovery made my stomach twist tighter. A soft knock interrupted my search. Celia? Tessa's voice trembled. You need to come quickly. I found Ivy huddled in the window seat of her art studio, tears streaming down her face. Tessa paced nearby, practically vibrating with anger. Tell her what happened, Tessa demanded. Ivy shook her head, but Tessa wouldn't back down. Fine, I'll tell her. I heard Vivian threatening to make sure Ivy's art school application gets rejected unless she agrees to change her style to something more appropriate for the family image. She said Sterling has connections on the board, Ivy whispered, that he could make sure I never get accepted anywhere. I crouched beside Ivy, noting the crumpled sketches around her, dark, emotional pieces that captured exactly what our family was becoming. Did anyone else hear this conversation? Ronan was there. Tessa spat. He just stood there and let it happen. The brother I knew would have never allowed this. But the brother I knew seemed to be disappearing more each day. When did this happen? This morning, right after you left Dad's office. Tessa's eyes narrowed. What were you doing in there anyway? Before I could answer, Dad's voice boomed from downstairs. Celia. My office now. I found him standing behind his desk, face flushed with anger. Sterling Kane's letter lay open before him. You went through my private files, he said, voice dangerously quiet. Someone had to. This debt to Sterling Kane. Is this why you're letting Vivian destroy our family? That's enough. His fist slammed the desk. You have no idea what's at stake. Sterling Kane could ruin us all with one phone call. This marriage is our only protection. Protection? I laughed bitterly. Look what it's already cost us. Ronan's integrity. Ivy's dreams. Our family soul. Get out, he growled. And stay away from those files, or I'll make sure you regret it. I turned to leave, but not before catching sight of fresh documents on his desk. Transfer papers. With Sterling Kane's company logo clearly visible at the top. The weekly family dinner felt like navigating a minefield. Ronan sat at one end of the table, Vivian's hand possessively on his arm, while Mom pushed food around her plate, avoiding everyone's eyes. The empty chair where Dad usually sat screamed his absence. He'd claimed a last-minute business meeting with Sterling Kane. I hear you've been quite busy, Celia, Vivian said, breaking the silence. Going through old files, asking questions about Daddy's business. My fork clattered against the plate. Interesting that you know about that. Ronan tells me everything. She smiled, squeezing his arm. We don't keep secrets. Really? I turned to my brother. Did you tell her about the letter I found? The one that fell from your pocket. Ronan's face drained of color. Vivian's smile flickered. What letter? Tessa demanded, suddenly alert. It doesn't matter, Ronan cut in. Celia needs to stop digging into things that don't concern her. Don't concern me? I laughed. Our sister's art career is being threatened, Dad's business is tangled up with Sterling Kane, and you're being used as some kind of human collateral. But sure, it doesn't concern me. That's enough. Ronan stood, his chair scraping back. You're just jealous because for once, something isn't about you. You can't stand that I'm happy, that I'm finally doing something right for this family. Right for the family? Mom's quiet voice surprised us all. Is that what you think this is? Marlene, Vivian started, but Mom held up her hand. I've kept quiet too long. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her purse, pulling out a worn envelope. I found this in your father's study. It's from Sterling Kane, dated last week. He's calling in the debt, Ronan. All of it, unless the wedding goes forward. I finished, the pieces clicking into place. Vivian stood abruptly. Ronan, we're leaving. Now. I watched my brother's face, seeing the war behind his eyes. But in the end, he followed Vivian out, just like always. Mom, I said softly, what exactly does Sterling Kane have over Dad? She slid the envelope across the table. See for yourself. But Celia, be careful. Some truths are dangerous. Back in my apartment, I spread the documents across my dining table like pieces of a twisted puzzle. Mom's letter revealed more than just a debt. It showed a pattern of manipulation stretching back decades. Sterling Kane hadn't just invested in Dad's business. He'd orchestrated its near collapse to force this marriage. My phone buzzed. Another missed call from Ronan. The third today. I ignored it, focusing instead on the financial records I'd pulled from work. Something about Sterling's company structure didn't add up. A knock at my door made me freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Sterling Kane himself, impeccably dressed and wearing an unsettling smile. MS. Heart, he said when I opened the door. I believe we need to talk. I let him in, watching as he surveyed my evidence wall with something like amusement. Thorough work, he noted. You're wasting your talents at that mid-tier firm. What do you want? To offer you a choice. He placed a business card on my table. A position at Kane Industries. Executive level, of course. Your financial skills could be useful to my organization. You mean you want to buy my silence? I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. His smile hardened. Better than the alternative your father faces. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Ivy. Vivian's making me change my portfolio. Says it's for my own good. Please help. Sterling noticed my expression. Your sister shows promise. It would be a shame if her artistic career never got off the ground. Are you threatening my family? On the contrary, I'm offering to protect them, just like I've always protected your father. He moved toward the door. You have 24 hours to decide. Oh, and MS. Heart. He paused. That data you're analyzing? I'd be careful. Some trails are better left unfollowed. After he left, my hands shook as I pulled up the company records again. There, buried in subsidiaries and shell corporations, I finally saw it, the connection that changed everything. Sterling Kane's empire was built on fraud, and my father wasn't just his victim. He was his accomplice. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at midnight. I can prove everything. The old boathouse creaked in the midnight wind as I waited, clutching the USB drive containing everything I'd discovered about Sterling's fraud. My phone showed 12:05 a.m. Vivian was late. Footsteps on the dock made me turn. But instead of Vivian, I found myself facing Ronan. She's not coming, he said quietly. But I needed to talk to you alone. How did you? Vivian tells me everything, remember? His voice was hollow. Including how you've been digging into Dad's past, threatening to expose everything. I'm trying to protect our family. By destroying it, he pulled out a folder. These are the original documents. The ones that prove Dad's involvement in Sterling's fraud. He held them over the water. Walk away from this, Celia. Let the wedding happen. Or I'll make sure Dad goes to prison. My breath caught. You do that to your own father? To protect Vivian? Yes. His hand trembled. She's the only good thing in this mess. She's manipulating you. No, she understood what I couldn't. Sometimes love means making impossible choices. He dropped the folder into my hands. You have until tomorrow to decide. Either destroy the evidence and accept the marriage, or I'll turn Dad in myself. As he turned to leave, his shoulder brushed mine. I'm sorry, he whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. I opened the folder with shaking hands, finding not just evidence of Dad's fraud, but proof that Mom had known all along. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every silent dinner, it had all been to protect the secret. My phone buzzed, a message from Ivy with a photo of her new portfolio, sanitized, commercial, everything her art wasn't meant to be. Below it, she'd written, maybe Vivian's right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Another text followed from an unknown number. Final warning, MS. Heart. Take the job offer. Or tomorrow, your family loses everything. SK. I stared at the documents in my hands, proof of 2 decades of lies, and realized I had become the very thing I'd been fighting, another person forcing impossible choices on the people I loved. The water below the dock looked very dark and very deep. The rehearsal dinner buzzed with forced cheer as I walked in, USB drive heavy in my clutch. Sterling Kane stood at the head table, champagne in hand, ready to toast his daughter's triumph. Vivian sat beside him, her smile brittle as she whispered something to Ronan. I hadn't planned to do this here. But when I saw Ivy's newest paintings displayed in the corner, safe, commercial pieces that screamed of surrender, something snapped. Before the toasts began, I said, my voice carrying across the room, I have something to share. Ronan half rose, but Vivian's hand on his arm stopped him. Sterling's eyes narrowed. Celia, Dad warned, but I was already connecting the drive to the presentation screen. You all deserve to know what this marriage really is. The documents appeared, years of fraud, manipulation, and lies. Sterling Kane didn't save our family's business. He orchestrated its collapse to force this exact moment. Gasps filled the room as the evidence mounted. Sterling's face darkened, but before he could speak, Vivian stood. You're right, she said quietly. The room froze. Even Sterling looked shocked. Vivian, he started, but she cut him off. I knew what you did to them, Daddy. Just like you did to Mom before she left. Her voice shook. You taught me that love means control. That family means leverage. She turned to Ronan. I thought I was protecting us both. By threatening my sisters? Ronan's voice cracked. By making me choose? I became exactly what I hated, Vivian whispered. Because I was terrified of losing the only person who ever loved me for myself. Sterling lunged for the presentation controls, but Tessa, quiet, watchful Tessa, blocked his path. I recorded everything, she announced. Every threat, every manipulation. It's already with the SEC. The room erupted into chaos. As security led Sterling away, I watched Ronan and Vivian in their own world of broken trust and painful truths. Mom held Dad as he faced the consequences of his choices. And Ivy walked to her displayed paintings and quietly turned them all face down. Sometimes victory feels nothing like you imagined. Sometimes it just feels like the beginning of a different kind of fight. 6 months later, I stood in Ivy's first gallery showing, watching her explain her newest series to an enthusiastic crowd. The paintings were raw, honest, scenes of family conflict and reconciliation that made my chest tight with recognition. She's really something, Ronan said, appearing beside me. He looked tired but lighter somehow. The weight of pretense finally lifted from his shoulders. Tessa's already planning her own rebellion. She's applying to law school. Following in your footsteps. More like yours. He smiled slightly. Someone needs to keep fighting for the truth. Across the room, Mom and Dad sat together, their hands clasped as they took in Ivy's work. Dad's trial was still pending, but he'd chosen to cooperate, to face his mistakes rather than hide behind more lies. Mom had found her voice at last, quiet but firm in her support of all her children. Have you heard from Vivian? I asked carefully. Ronan nodded. She's in therapy, working through everything Sterling taught her about love and control. We're talking, not about getting back together, but about healing. A familiar painting caught my eye, the one Vivian had tried to make Ivy change. Now it hung prominently, its darkness and light intertwined in a way that spoke of both pain and hope. I thought revenge would feel different, I admitted. More satisfying somehow. Maybe because it wasn't really about revenge in the end. The gallery doors opened, and Sterling Kane's wife, Vivian's mother, walked in. She'd returned after hearing about Sterling's arrest, determined to make amends with the daughters she'd left behind. Her presence here felt like both an ending and a beginning. You know what's strange? I said, watching her approach Ivy's paintings with tears in her eyes. I always thought protecting our family meant keeping it exactly the same. But maybe it's about letting it change, grow, even break a little, as long as we're honest about putting it back together. Ronan squeezed my shoulder before moving away to join Tessa, who was already arguing passionately with a potential buyer about artistic interpretation. Some things never change, but sometimes the things that do change matter more than the things that don't.
Your favorite crab meat pizza is here. My daughter-in-law places the plate before me, her tone unusually sweet. Mom, eat as much as you want. Her sudden kindness is enough to raise my suspicions. I'm not naive. I know when something's off. This shift in behavior feels more like a setup, And I can't help but think that my eldest child and their spouse are plotting something. It wouldn't be the first time they've pulled a stunt on me, so why should I believe this fancy pizza is any different? Their history of hostility makes this sudden niceness all the more suspicious. I refuse to be underestimated. I can protect myself, and if they're up to something, I'll be ready to turn the tables. I'm Mary, a housewife in my 60s. I've lived alone ever since my husband passed away years ago. After his death, my eldest child and their spouse offered to let me move in with them. They were newlyweds at the time, and I didn't want to intrude on their special time, so I declined. Despite this, they moved into a house near mine, insisting they were concerned about me. I was genuinely touched by their thoughtfulness, even though I reassured them that they didn't need to visit so often. When my child said, "I'm worried about you, Mom," I allowed myself to be swayed. My daughter-in-law, too, would drop by when my child was busy, saying she wanted to get closer to me. I felt proud that my child had married such a caring person, but back then, I was blissfully unaware of their true motives. Their kindness seemed genuine, but I now realize how naive I was. True kindness, without hidden motives, is rare. I was drawn in by their sweet words, but eventually, the truth came to light. One day, they visited and ended up spending the night since they had no plans for the following day. I didn't want to impose on their time as a couple, so I suggested they could go home since it was nearby, but my daughter-in-law insisted. "We want to deepen our relationship, so we'd like to stay." I relented and offered them the guest room. My late husband had built this house, and it's far too big for just me, with many rooms left unused. The room was a bit dusty, but my daughter-in-law helped clean it up. She was skilled at housework and had been helpful since the marriage, which only added to my positive impression of her. In the middle of the night, I woke up feeling thirsty and headed to the kitchen. On my way, I noticed the light was on in the living room. Curious, I peeked in and saw my eldest child and their spouse sitting on the sofa, deep in conversation. Unable to resist, I eavesdropped on their discussion. "I'm so tired of this. That old lady works us too hard, don't you think? Just hang in there a little longer. Once Mom hands over the inheritance, we're done." If her husband hadn't been a company CEO, we wouldn't have to go through all this. It's almost funny how easily she's fooled just because we're nice to her. Mom's always been emotionally vulnerable. She'll probably give us the inheritance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If this was true, then all their kindness had been nothing more than a ruse to get their hands on my late husband's inheritance. Were all the caring words they'd said to me, "We're family, we want to support each other," just lies? Why were they so obsessed with the inheritance? I never noticed them struggling financially, but maybe they were hiding something. Could they really be so desperate for money? I needed to understand what was driving them to behave this way, so I started asking around the neighborhood and among friends. What I discovered was shocking. Both of them were deeply involved in gambling and had racked up enormous debts, amounts they could never repay with ordinary jobs. I finally understood why they were so desperate for the inheritance. My late husband had left a considerable sum to our eldest child, though less than what I had received. They had squandered it all and turned it into debt. Their so-called kindness had been a calculated effort to secure the inheritance from me. From that moment on, I became cautious around them. "Do you need any help, Mom? We want to be there for you," they would ask. "I'm fine, thank you. I've grown accustomed to living alone. Please, focus on your own lives," I would reply. My daughter-in-law would smile and say, "I'm glad to hear that," but her expression would harden. It was clear she was frustrated that I wasn't falling for their act. Who do they think they're fooling? I don't need kindness that comes with strings attached. After keeping my distance for some time, I received a call from my daughter-in-law one day. "We need to talk." When I arrived at their home, they led me to the living room and asked me to sit on the sofa. My daughter-in-law spoke in a serious tone. "Do you have a new love interest, Mom?" I was stunned. I had no idea how she had arrived at such a conclusion. Sensing an opportunity, my daughter-in-law began to speculate. "You've been distant lately, which made me suspicious, but you're colder than I thought. Mom, have you forgotten about Dad, who worked so hard for you? Now you just want to be happy yourself." "There's no one else. You're mistaken," I said, but my daughter-in-law wasn't listening. She had no evidence, yet she seemed convinced that if I had a new love interest, it would jeopardize their plans. After all, this imagined person might lay claim to my money. Mom, you should really reconsider dating at your age. Have you thought about your position? Why would you say something so cruel? I don't mean to be cruel. I'm just worried about you. Mom, what if this person is deceiving you? You'd be the one getting hurt, and I can't stand that. I could see right through her. She was only concerned about protecting her inheritance, but she wanted to maintain the appearance of a caring daughter-in-law, never revealing her true intentions. That's fine for now, I thought. The true nature of my eldest child and their spouse will reveal itself in due time. I knew I'd see their true colors eventually, and that moment arrived sooner than I expected. Happy birthday, Mom. It's just a little something, my eldest child said, handing me a bag from a fancy pizza place. Inside were several pizzas, including my favorite, loaded with crab meat. Thank you, let me just get these plated. No need, Mom, it's your special day. Sit down, I'll take care of it, my daughter-in-law said, taking the bag and heading into the kitchen. My eldest child followed to help. They might have been pretending to celebrate my birthday, but I knew better. Something was definitely up, but what? As I wondered, they returned with plates. In front of me was a plate piled high with crab meat pizza. Here's your favorite, Mom, enjoy, my eldest child said, nodding in agreement. To anyone else, this would have seemed like a joyful birthday celebration, but I wasn't fooled. There had to be something wrong with that plate. I wasn't naive enough to overlook their overly kind behavior. With my husband gone, I had to be vigilant. I would never trust them blindly. They would regret underestimating me, regret it deeply. It does look delicious, but my taste has changed recently. I'm more in the mood for the foie gras on your plate, I said, reaching for my eldest child's plate. I'd always claimed not to like foie gras, so their plate had more of it. Wait, Mom, my eldest child tried to stop me. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Is there a problem? You used to love crab meat too, didn't you? Well, my taste has changed as well. I've developed a liking for foie gras. Is that so? Then let's not be biased. We can share both, I said, smiling. My eldest child's face turned pale. The crab meat pizza, which I had always said was my favorite, was only on my plate. It was clear they had tampered with it, hoping to set me up. My child's reluctance to eat it was all the confirmation I needed. But it looks so good, why don't you try a piece? I suggested, holding a slice of crab meat pizza up to my eldest child's mouth. With no way out, they took a bite, their expression one of dread. My daughter-in-law looked at my eldest child with concern, seeing how pale they'd become. Oh, you don't look well. Maybe it wasn't as good as we thought, Mom, she said, her voice wavering. Considering how my husband is feeling, maybe the pizza isn't that great. I'm sorry, but let's call it a day. I'll make something new. My daughter-in-law's panic was obvious. She must have realized there was no salvaging the situation. But your son doesn't look well. Why don't you stay the night? It's not safe for you to go home like this. No, we'll leave. Don't be shy. You've been so good to me. My daughter-in-law fumbled for excuses, saying, well, it was obvious she wanted to leave. For a couple trying to deceive me, they were terrible liars. They panicked at the slightest hiccup. As I observed my eldest child, something strange happened. After a few minutes, with a loud thud, they collapsed. I rushed over and found them snoring loudly. It was clear they had been drugged with a sleeping pill. Oh, they've fallen asleep, must have been tired, I said, tilting my head. My daughter-in-law snapped. Enough, why won't things go as planned? We discussed how important today was. Wake up now. She slapped my eldest child's cheek, but they remained unconscious. I was stunned, watching as their true selves were finally exposed. Ignoring my presence, my daughter-in-law began to spill everything. I've been playing the good daughter-in-law, thinking if I buttered you up, I'd get the inheritance and clear our debts. Today was supposed to be the last step. We were going to put you to sleep and steal your banking card. It's all your fault nothing worked. What are you going to do about it? She glared at me with a mix of frustration and desperation. So, that was their plan, drug me and steal my banking card. To use someone's birthday for such a scheme was beyond despicable. But unlike them, I decided to be honest. Actually, I've known all along that your kindness was just a front for the money. That's why I kept my distance and didn't touch the pizza you offered. I'm not as foolish as you two seem to think, I said calmly. My daughter-in-law's face registered shock. She genuinely believed I was in the dark about their schemes. How underestimated I feel. What kind of fool did they take me for? Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not as naive as you two. I've always found your sudden kindness suspicious. I even overheard you talking about the inheritance when I stayed over. You two are incredibly foolish to discuss your plans in the very home of your target. Don't call us fools. We've been trying our best. Is this best effort the reason you're drowning in debt? If so, you two are truly pitiful. You know about the debt too. How much do you know? Clearly, she hadn't expected me to be aware of the debt. The word debt made her visibly anxious, as if realizing how much I had figured out. I did some digging and found out that you two are drowning in debt because of your gambling habits. I was shocked when I discovered just how deep in debt you are, I said, watching as my daughter-in-law's face grew increasingly pale. She must have realized there was no way out. Mom, I'm really sorry. Please forgive us. We can't survive without money. Please lend us some. We promise to pay you back. She pleaded, her previous confidence gone. She was at her breaking point, yet even in this situation, she was still asking for money. I was taken aback, realizing that, to her, I was nothing more than a convenient source of financial support. Sorry, but I won't give you a single cent. I have no money for people like you. Don't say that. There's the inheritance from your late husband, right? You have money. Please help us. No, I can't trust people like you to repay me. You need to take responsibility for your own actions. My daughter-in-law looked defeated at my words, but she seemed to understand my resolve and didn't ask for money again. After that, my interactions with my eldest child and daughter-in-law dwindled. They stopped coming to my house and barely contacted me. Surprisingly, when those days came, I didn't feel lonely. Instead, I felt a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted, free from people who only sought to deceive me. Later on, my eldest child and daughter-in-law moved away. According to the neighbors, they were taken by some rather shady-looking people. They probably couldn't pay off their debt and were forced to flee to a distant state. They might be facing a terrifying situation now, desperate to escape, but that's no longer my concern. We are no longer connected. I reported the end of this turbulent chapter to my late husband's photo. It seemed as if his expression in the photo was one of relief. My only true family is my late husband. He was the only person who truly stood by me and supported me. Life is short, but I want to live it with strength, cherishing the memories I made with him. Why aren't you eating dinner? My father-in-law asked, noticing the scant portions at the dining table. Just enough for 3. It was the first time we'd seen him in a long time, gathered for New Year's. This happens all the time, I replied, my voice quiet but resolute. What do you mean by, this happens all the time? His eyes flicked curiously between my mother-in-law and husband. A daughter-in-law who can't give her mother-in-law grandchildren is nothing but a servant, isn't she? My mother-in-law responded casually, as if stating a well-known fact, while chewing the hamburger steak I had prepared. Exactly, Ruby is our servant. She stays in the kitchen and takes care of us while we eat, my husband added, his tone matching hers as he took a loud sip of beer. Every weekend, he dragged me to his mother's house to help with her chores. You should be grateful I'm letting you stay, even though you couldn't give her grandchildren. The least you can do is help out. I dreaded those visits, but my commitment kept me going. Refusing was never an option. My husband would berate me until I complied. He knew how easily I lost my temper and struggled to find the right words. Mom, I brought your servant. He even started greeting me that way recently. What are you saying? My father-in-law asked, clearly disturbed by how they referred to me. That's how a normal family with children operates. Ruby's infertility took away any chance of grandchildren. It's not her fault. You should stop mistreating her. What do you know? My mother-in-law snapped, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You live too far away to understand what it's like. Exactly, Dad. Don't tell us what to do. You didn't have to watch Mom lose the possibility of having grandchildren. My husband chimed in, mocking his father's concern. I silently ground the coffee beans, their conversation a bitter soundtrack to the task. As usual, my mother-in-law and husband expected me to serve them coffee as soon as they finished their meal. I hadn't had time to eat much myself, just a piece of sweet bread earlier, between errands for my mother-in-law. Come on, I'm hungry too. I'm not sure what I'm doing. A single coffee bean slipped from my hand, tumbling to the floor as if trying to escape the relentless grind. My name is Ruby, a 37-year-old housewife. During the weekday lunch hours, I work part-time in the kitchen of a family restaurant. My husband and I rent an apartment together. I used to work at the same local bank as my husband, but I left my job 3 years ago to focus on fertility treatments. After months of trying, we sought medical help and learned that the issue was on my side. Despite a year of painful treatments, I was eventually told that getting pregnant was impossible for me. Shortly after, everything changed. My husband and mother-in-law began to treat me differently. We had always managed our finances independently when I was working, but once I quit, my husband took over all our expenses. He controlled our savings, paid the rent and insurance, and gave me an allowance for living expenses. At first, $1,000 a month was enough to cover everything comfortably. But then, now that we're done with fertility treatments, we can save some money, my husband said the day we decided to stop trying for a baby. What? I've been giving you extra money to cover the costs of treatment, but now that it's over, you don't need that much anymore. You can always go back to work if you want. True to his word, he gradually reduced my allowance, from $800 to $600, then $500 a month. I desperately tried to find work again, but my mother-in-law had other ideas. Working full-time isn't suitable for a wife. You'll end up divorced if you can't manage the housework. So, you're saying I shouldn't work? I asked, confused. Of course, you can work part-time, but your main focus should be on Carl and taking care of me, since you can't give us grandchildren. It's the least you can do. Was it really such a crime that I couldn't have children? Despite enduring the painful treatments, I couldn't fulfill that expectation. My mother-in-law's attitude shifted entirely. She started calling me for every little thing. My bathroom is filthy, come clean it, and I need you to drive me to dinner with a friend, she'd demand. She expected me to spend every weekend at her house, working endlessly, but no matter how hard I tried, nothing I did was ever good enough. Why are you folding laundry like that? The corners don't match. Fold it again, properly this time, she snapped, once throwing a pile of freshly folded laundry onto the floor in frustration. She seemed to take pleasure in hurting me. After dinner, my father-in-law asked, I'm going out for a drink, would you like to join me? He quickly added, if you don't want to, that's okay, I just wanted to talk about what happened at dinner. His concern touched me deeply, and I felt my emotions welling up. You've been treated so unfairly by Elizabeth and Carl, he said softly, and those words unlocked something inside me. Tears began to fall uncontrollably. I've noticed it for a while. If you need to talk, I'm here to listen. He took me to a local bar, a small but cozy place with a warm atmosphere. We sat across from each other at a table. He ordered a beer, and I chose a whiskey soda. We got some mixed nuts and a salad to share. After taking a sip of his beer, my father-in-law began, I could see at dinner that Elizabeth and Carl were being rude to you. I hesitated but then opened up about everything I had been holding in. It started after I gave up on fertility treatments. I confessed. They blame me for not being able to have children and treat me like a servant. Carl won't let me work full-time, and he's been cutting down my living expenses. Now, he only gives me $500 a month. I paused, then continued, but what hurts the most is being called a slave. My father-in-law sighed. Elizabeth is only happy when she gets her way. Yeah, I know. She wasn't always like this. She became selfish after having Carl. She used to yell at me so much that I started to resent her. Now we just pretend to be a happy couple. Maybe Carl doesn't want to be with me anymore. I'm envious that you have somewhere to escape to, I admitted. You need to be tougher. Make your voice heard. Maybe, but just talking to you helps, I said, feeling a bit of relief. That's good. I'm glad I could help. We lingered for a while longer, each having another round, him with beer, and me with whiskey. But as soon as we returned home, reality hit hard. I'm back, I called out as I opened the door, only to find my mother-in-law and husband standing there. Dad, did you have a night out with my wife? Carl asked, eyeing us both suspiciously. Wait, what? I just invited Ruby out for a drink. My mother-in-law's face darkened. What kind of relationship is this where you can go out for drinks together, just like your husband said? What are you implying, Ruby? Is it wrong for a wife to go to a bar with a man? You can't give me grandchildren, but you still have desires. Both my husband and mother-in-law pointed at me in unison. Enough. A booming voice filled the room, as if thunder had struck. My father-in-law, fuming with rage, glared at Carl and Elizabeth. He exploded. What's this about desires? All I wanted was for Ruby to unwind. The intensity of his anger made my heart race. Even the mildest people can become formidable when enraged. Elizabeth. At the sound of her name, my mother-in-law flinched, revealing either her fear of him or her guilt. You questioned the nature of my relationship with Ruby just because I took her out for a drink. She's been treated like a servant, and I simply wanted her to have a break, that's all. And because of Ruby, I can't have grandchildren. How can you say that when you've never wanted children? The accusation stung, making me want to scream. My mother-in-law had always blamed me for not providing grandchildren. Well, grandchildren are different from other children, aren't they? But your actions toward Ruby make it clear you weren't really interested in having grandchildren. You're just using it as a pretext to blame her. My mother-in-law looked like she was about to respond but then quickly turned her gaze away from my father-in-law. Was she speechless? Or was she simply afraid of her husband? Carl. Wait, what? I heard you only give Ruby $500 a month for living expenses. Do you keep the rest of your salary? No, I pay for rent and insurance. Even so, I don't believe that's all of your salary. My husband turned away, biting his lower lip, clearly unable to come up with a convincing excuse. I'm here to discuss our future. Let's get straight to it. My father-in-law guided us to the living room. What do you mean, discuss our future? Just sit down. Make some coffee first, Ruby. Don't tell her what to do. My father-in-law's voice boomed, causing my mother-in-law to flinch. Make coffee for us and a cup for Ruby too. My mother-in-law nodded and took her place in a chair, sitting quietly. My husband joined her, while I took a seat farther from the table. I'll be retiring in a few years. After my current assignment ends, I won't be living with you anymore, my father-in-law began, still standing. What do you mean? Elizabeth and Carl's voices overlapped in confusion. Mr. Murphy looked at both of them sternly. We've been pretending to be a couple for years. There's no need for us to live together anymore. I'll go where I want, and you can stay here. That's fine, but after you accused me of infidelity earlier, I've decided to sell the house. Elizabeth, I'm leaving you. Where am I supposed to live? My mother-in-law, clearly shocked, stood up. Why don't you find a place to live? How can I afford that? I can't pay the rent. Get Carl to help you. He only gives her $500 a month. I'm sure he can cover your expenses. That's not possible. Carl, clearly anxious, stood up and waved his hands in distress. We don't have the money. If I help with that, I won't be able to cover Mom's debt. Elizabeth gasped. My husband hesitated but eventually admitted that Elizabeth was in debt. Was she really in financial trouble? You just mentioned debt, didn't you? My father-in-law's voice grew even more intense. Elizabeth and Carl, what exactly do you mean by debt? Explain. I didn't mean it like that. I said, explain. My mother-in-law started crying at the sound of her husband's anger, but his fury didn't subside. Mom owes me $50,000. I'm her co-signer. With a weary look, my husband continued, when we stopped fertility treatments, Mom invested in the stock market. She made some money at first, but then the market crashed. You lost money in the stock market and went into debt? Yes, I used family funds for the investment. We were advised to buy stocks that were supposed to rise, but instead, we ended up in debt. Now, I'm paying it off with my salary, and Mom is working part-time at a supermarket to repay it. This was all news to me. I had never heard about any stock investments or debt before. It turned out my mother-in-law had lost a lot of money in the stock market and borrowed to cover the losses when we stopped fertility treatments. Her attempts to repay the debt by investing in rising stocks had only deepened their financial troubles. Maybe, I blurted out without thinking, that's when you and Carl started treating me like a servant. Ruby, what are you implying? My mother-in-law asked sharply. Were you just taking your frustrations out on me? The mistreatment began around the time I stopped fertility treatments. I don't think it was solely about wanting a grandchild. It seems more like you took your anger out on me because it was convenient. My mother-in-law remained silent, as expected. And Carl used the money he took from my monthly allowance to pay off his debts. He could save money now that there are no fertility treatments. The reduction in my funds wasn't due to any strange reason. It was to cover his mom's debt. You stupid idiot. My father-in-law finally exploded. Even if it's family money, it's money I worked hard for and saved. You invested it in stocks without consulting me, and now it's gone. What kind of reckless spending is this? With that, my father-in-law stormed out of the room, heading towards the second floor. We all followed him. What are you doing, Dad? Show me Elizabeth's belongings. I want to see what she's been buying. Stop it, Elizabeth cried and tried to intervene, but her husband ignored her. Stop it, he flung open the closet door as she continued to scream. The first thing I noticed was a collection of luxury handbags, at least 10 of them. Ruby, are these bags expensive? They're all luxury items, each costing over $1,000. My father-in-law then opened a small drawer in the closet, revealing an assortment of accessories, rings, necklaces, and earrings, some adorned with diamonds and rubies. I picked up one of the rings and noticed it was engraved with K18, indicating it was 18-karat gold. Elizabeth, did you buy all these expensive things without telling me? I'm sorry. But divorce, my father-in-law snapped, turning his disgusted gaze toward my husband. All this spending, the unauthorized stock investments, and treating Ruby like a servant, divorce. I want a divorce, and I won't accept any objections. Then how am I supposed to live? Talk to Carl. I'll sell this house and land immediately. You can sell these bags and jewelry to cover your expenses. My mother-in-law had no retort. My husband, now visibly humbled, nodded and bit his lip, lacking the arrogance he once had. The next day, my father-in-law handed me 2 sets of divorce papers. Here, Ruby, if you want to file for divorce as well. I glanced at my husband. He sighed and turned away, unable to meet my eyes. I had wanted a divorce for a long time, but now I was more focused on securing alimony from them. I had spent the night reflecting on my suffering and what I wanted for the future. The fertility treatments had been excruciating, and despite my efforts, I couldn't conceive. It was a devastating realization that all my sacrifices had been in vain. As I struggled with my grief, Carl had informed me that since fertility treatments were no longer needed, he would be reducing my living expenses. What are you talking about? This is all Carl's fault. Be quiet, Elizabeth. My father-in-law's face was a mask of fury, and my mother-in-law fell silent immediately. My mother-in-law blamed me for not giving her a grandchild and then treated me like a servant. Do you have any idea how hard that was for me? Naturally, neither Elizabeth nor Carl had a response. Ultimately, Carl needed the money to pay off his debts, and for Elizabeth, the luxury spending was simply an outlet for the stress of her financial losses. I expect to be reimbursed for this. And if I refuse to pay? Fine, I'll speak with my lawyer. My husband, overwhelmed, rested his forehead in his palm and said nothing. After the new year, my father-in-law finalized his divorce from my mother-in-law. He quickly sold the house. A buyer interested in the land for new construction snapped it up. The old house was demolished to clear the land. With nowhere else to go, my mother-in-law moved into a dilapidated apartment that seemed on the verge of collapse. She now lives with my ex-husband. Between their living expenses and the alimony payments to me, they are struggling financially. My mother-in-law works at a supermarket during the day and takes a part-time job at a pub at night. My ex-husband also took on a second job at a wedding hall on weekends in addition to his regular job. They have been complaining to everyone they know about the difficulty of paying off their debts while watching others thrive. Meanwhile, I settled into a charming new apartment and secured a job through my father-in-law. It's a clerical position at a security company where I can utilize my accounting skills and banking experience. I want you to be happy. If you need anything, just let me know, my father-in-law said, offering his support. I'm determined to make the most of this new chapter and prove myself. On my first day at work, I donned a new suit and made a promise to myself. I'm Lynn. Recently, I married my husband, Scott. and gained a sister-in-law named Abigail. So, I was caught off guard by a strange call from her. Len, you listening? I am, but I didn't quite catch that. Okay, I'll say it again. Your cruiser, I crashed it into an iceberg. Yeah, still doesn't make sense. First off, I don't own a cruiser, and an iceberg, we're in Los Angeles, hardly an iceberg hotspot. Abigail is known for being a bit unconventional, so I figured she might be confused or just trying to mess with me. I decided to ask her again, did you really crash into an iceberg? Yeah, I deliberately hit the iceberg and sank it, Abigail said, laughing. Her tone annoyed me, so I pressed her further. Can you explain a bit more? Len, you're so silly. Fine, I'll explain, Abigail replied, still chuckling. Her story took me back to when I visited Scott's family home. We were having a family meeting, and Abigail was there. As soon as she saw me, she said, wow, you look kind of Japanese. My grandma's Japanese. She married an American, and my mom married my dad, who's also American. I have a more East Asian appearance, which has made me stand out a few times. I explained. I was a bit wary because I'd been teased about my appearance before, but Abigail surprised me by saying, really? That's so cool. You're really cute. Her compliment was a relief. I'd been worried about how Scott's family would accept me. Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all. Sure thing. That's how our conversation went until Victoria, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, joined us. Len, you lived in Los Angeles, right? Do you still have a house there? The house we lived in is occupied by someone else now, but we have relatives' homes there. Oh, I see. As long as you have relatives' homes there, no need to worry. Victoria seemed oddly pleased. Abigail added, that's what I was thinking too. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to make a fuss. Especially since traveling with Victoria and her family was a rare opportunity. I let the conversation continue, though Victoria and Abigail kept asking strange questions about the house I used to live in, the car I drove, and my relatives' homes in Los Angeles. I mentioned living in a house with a pool and that my uncle lives by a river. Victoria and Abigail laughed maliciously at this. That's when I realized they were planning to exploit my relatives to visit the West Coast. It felt like they were trying to take advantage of me. I was hesitant to complain since I didn't want to risk their acceptance of my marriage. After some thought, I decided to endure for now. The opportunity for a West Coast trip wasn't immediate, and I hoped by the time it came around, we could address this issue properly. For now, I chose to keep quiet. Somehow, I managed to get through all the introductions. At the end, Abigail asked for my contact information, which, regrettably, I gave her. That turned out to be a big mistake. After that, she started reaching out more frequently. At first, it was about once a week, and I could either accommodate or brush it off casually. But soon, her messages became more persistent, and it was getting to be a real hassle. I started using convenient excuses, like being at work or driving, to avoid her. Once Scott and I filed our marriage application, Abigail became even more relentless. I tried to meet up with her a few times, but her requests, twice or even 3 times a week, were overwhelming. Today, she called again, saying, hey, Len, want to hang out? It's already 8 p.m., and I have work tomorrow. What? You can't make it work, right? No, I really can't. Abigail has finished high school and works part-time, so she probably has more free time. But as a full-time employee with work from Monday to evening and only weekends and holidays off, plus newly acquired household responsibilities, I simply don't have the bandwidth to fit Abigail into my schedule. Sorry, I have a meeting early tomorrow morning. Stingy, even though you're rich. With that, she ended the call. I didn't hear from Abigail after that. Her comment about being rich confused me. I work full-time, but I don't have a high salary. I couldn't figure out where she got that idea. The next day, Victoria called me. Len, do you want to go shopping together? I'm pretty busy with work, I replied casually. Then Victoria said something strange. You're rich, right, Len? I wanted to ask for your opinion on some brands I'm interested in. Wait, did I hear that right? Sorry, did you just say something about being rich? Yes, I did. What about it? I'm not rich. What? But you lived in Los Angeles, right? Victoria said as if that was obvious. Does living in Los Angeles automatically mean wealth? If that's the case, does that mean all Los Angeles residents are wealthy? I sighed, feeling bewildered. Victoria asked, "What's wrong?" "Just a misunderstanding. I'm not rich." "What? Even though you lived in a house with a pool?" "That's pretty common in California." "Oh, really?" "Yes. Sorry, I must have misunderstood." And with that, Victoria abruptly ended the call, leaving me puzzled. What was going on? I couldn't make sense of it. When I discussed this with Scott, he spoke to Victoria and Abigail on my behalf. According to Scott, they had assumed that because I lived in Los Angeles and mentioned having a house with a pool, it must have been in Beverly Hills, and Beverly Hills equals wealth. They concluded that I must be rich. If one lives in Beverly Hills, it's not unreasonable to assume wealth. However, I lived in Los Angeles, not Beverly Hills. Their assumption was flawed, but they believed it anyway, which explained their probing questions. I found it odd when they asked about my house, but I was honest, which unfortunately fed their misconceptions. While a house with a pool might be common in California, it's almost unheard of in Birmingham. It seems Victoria and her group misunderstood and thought I was wealthy, hoping they could benefit from my marriage with money or gifts. Their frequent contact was likely an attempt to cozy up to me in hopes of gaining something. Eventually, Scott cleared up the misunderstanding, but Victoria and her group seemed a bit disgruntled about it. I suppose if I had been wealthy, we might have enjoyed trips or nightly parties together. I can understand their disappointment when that turned out to be untrue. Still, it was a relief to have the confusion resolved. Later, when I met with Victoria's family to discuss the wedding plans, Victoria's approach was noticeably different. If the misunderstanding had continued, she might have pushed for a lavish wedding. Instead, she asked, "What kind of wedding are you planning? You're not going too extravagant, are you?" "Yeah, I'm thinking a small, family-only event would be ideal." "Good choice. You have to be mindful of expenses now." Her concern was appreciated. However, Abigail still seemed skeptical and didn't participate much in the wedding planning, which was a bit disappointing. Despite her absence, the wedding plans were moving forward. A year later, our wedding day arrived, and it was lovely. My parents from Birmingham made it to the ceremony, but my grandparents from Los Angeles couldn't make it due to travel difficulties. Instead, my Uncle Taylor, my mother's brother, attended and promised to take pictures for my grandparents. A few hours before the ceremony, Taylor came to visit me in the dressing room. "Lynn, how are you?" Taylor runs a boat rental business, handling cruisers and pleasure boats popular among young Americans. He showed me a photo, saying, "Look at this, I just bought it." The photo was of a luxurious cruiser, clearly expensive. "How much?" "Ah, this much." Taylor typed a figure into his phone, $3 million. "What?" Taylor, who has some hearing issues from a past accident, didn't quite catch my reaction. Speaking a bit louder helped him understand better. While I was stunned by the price, Taylor showed me another photo. "Lynn, this is your wedding present." "For me?" It was a picture of a pleasure boat. Taylor explained that his company had recently upgraded their fleet and kept one boat aside specifically for me. It was currently at his riverside home and available for me to use whenever I visited. "Thank you so much." As we were talking, Abigail entered the dressing room. "What's this? What did you get?" Abigail asked with a sly smile, clearly having been eavesdropping. If I mention the pleasure boat to Abigail, she'll definitely want to go for a ride, so I'd rather keep it quiet. However, she might have overheard, making it tough to hide. Reluctantly, I told her, "Taylor gave me a boat." "A boat? Who just gives away a boat like that?" "It's a second-hand boat from Taylor's company. Instead of getting rid of it, he gave it to me." "Ha, interesting." Abigail's lack of enthusiasm was a relief. After Taylor left, I moved to the mirror to do my makeup. As I glanced through it, I noticed Abigail studying the photo Taylor had brought. She might be more interested than she let on. Just as I was pondering this, Abigail vanished. After the wedding, while we were driving back, Victoria asked, "Lynn, did you let Grandma know about the marriage?" "Of course, I even sent her photos of my wedding dress." "That's good, but don't you think it'd be better to visit her?" I had a sinking feeling about where this was going. Victoria continued, "I'd like to visit your grandpa and grandma too. But they're in Los Angeles." "Exactly, I was thinking we could combine it with a family trip to the West Coast. It seemed Victoria hadn't given up on her travel plans. It was hard to refuse. As I considered how to decline, Victoria added, "Actually, I spoke with Taylor." "What, Taylor?" "Yes, and he said he'd be thrilled to have us visit." "Did Taylor really say that?" "Huh, that's something you pushed through." I suspected Taylor hadn't actually agreed, so I declined, not wanting to impose on him. Victoria's expression suddenly turned serious. "Oh, poor Grandpa and Grandma missed the wedding and can't see their grandchild." "Please don't put it that way. Don't you want to see them?" "I do, but see, then let's go." In the end, I couldn't refuse. Encouraged by Victoria, we decided to go to the West Coast for our honeymoon. Despite my reservations, it would be nice to see my grandparents and enjoy some time near Taylor's River. Plus, there was the pleasure boat to consider. I decided to embrace the opportunity and make the most of it. A few months after the wedding, we took our summer vacation to visit the West Coast. Taylor was happy to host us, so Scott, Victoria, Abigail, and I headed to Taylor's house in Los Angeles. My father-in-law couldn't join us due to work, but it was our first family trip since getting married, and I hoped it would help us bond with Victoria and Abigail. The day we arrived, we had a wonderful time reconnecting with my grandparents and introducing Scott to them. I also introduced Victoria and Abigail, and we enjoyed a family gathering. Abigail, as always, was cheerful and quickly fit in with Taylor's family. Victoria seemed to be having a good time too, and I felt we were making progress toward becoming a true family. The next day, my brother Kevin, who lives in San Francisco and is a college student, came by to visit late in the morning. "Lynn, Kevin, how's school?" I asked. "It's the weekend, so I came to say hello. I'll introduce you to Scott and everyone else." We chatted, but I couldn't find Victoria and Abigail anywhere. Scott, who was helping my aunt, was there, but Victoria and her group were missing. "Scott, where are Victoria and the others?" "I'm not sure," Scott shrugged. Just then, I received a call from Abigail. "Hello, Lynn." "Abigail, where are you? My brother just arrived." Before I could finish, Abigail burst into laughter. "You're so laid back, Lynn. What's going on?" "Abigail, do you know where we are? I was just looking for you." "That's a secret, I just wanted to tell you something." "Tell me what?" "Your cruiser, I deliberately crashed it into an iceberg and sank it." Abigail laughed loudly. That was the extent of her explanation over the phone. "So that's what happened. I get the story now, but what about my cruiser?" I remembered something from the wedding day. Taylor had given me a pleasure boat. Abigail was eavesdropping on our conversation, saw the photo of the cruiser, and heard me mention receiving a boat. She might have gotten confused. I tried to clarify. "The boat I got is at Taylor's house, not mine. If it's a cruiser, it's not mine." "I'm not sure," Abigail replied. "I saw it, and it sank right in front of me. It's hard to say, but I don't own a cruiser." "What? There was a photo, and you mentioned a gift." "The boat I received was a pleasure boat." "A pleasure what?" "Exactly. Abigail might not distinguish between a pleasure boat and a cruiser. A pleasure boat is for recreation, and a cruiser is for overnight stays." "So the cruiser you're talking about isn't mine?" "That's what I was trying to figure out. Based on your description, it's likely Taylor's cruiser." As I was thinking this over, I heard Taylor shouting on the phone, "What have you done? What's going on?" It dawned on me that Abigail must have mistaken Taylor's $3 million cruiser for mine and accidentally sunk it. "Abigail, stay where you are." "Why? What's the problem?" "This is Los Angeles, not a rural area like Alabama. Sinking a boat and running away is serious here." "Really?" "Yes, the police here handle major incidents. They're not like the sheriffs in Alabama, understand?" "Oh no." I could hear Abigail's voice breaking as she cried and pleaded with Victoria nearby. "Mom, help me." "I don't know, Abigail, you did this on your own. Help me." "I just wanted to ride on the cruiser," Abigail replied. It seemed like they were both shifting blame. As long as they stayed put, it was manageable. I quickly contacted Scott and headed to the marina where Taylor's cruiser was docked. It was only a few minutes' drive away. When I arrived, several police officers were already on the scene. I spoke with a visibly shaken Taylor, who explained that Abigail and Victoria had asked to use the cruiser early in the morning. However, their strong Alabama accents made their English difficult to understand. Taylor thought their request was unclear, given their accents. I turned to Abigail for her side of the story. She said, "I kept asking Taylor if I could use Lynn's cruiser." "Did you actually say that?" "Yes, but he didn't seem to understand." "So you repeatedly said Lynn's cruiser?" It seemed like she was trying to clarify her request, but I doubted it would have been clear. I checked with Taylor to confirm what he heard. He said, "Lynn's cruiser." Given the pronunciation and Abigail's strong accent, it wasn't surprising that it was misunderstood. Taylor, having noticed Abigail's unusual behavior, thought she wanted to borrow a cruiser. He decided to let her use his own cruiser, mistaking her request for mine. That explained the confusion. But why would Abigail want to sink the cruiser? I wondered if she thought I was pretending to be rich and that the cruiser was part of my hidden wealth. Maybe she wanted to get back at me out of jealousy or frustration. Sinking a cruiser seemed extreme, but I needed answers. I asked her, "How did you manage to operate the cruiser? You don't have a boating license, do you?" "I just figured it out by watching Taylor," Abigail said. "So you just guessed?" "Yeah, I played around with it, got it moving, and then couldn't stop it. I crashed into the dock, and it started sinking, so I thought I might as well sink it." According to Abigail, her plan was only to cause minor trouble, but the cruiser moved more easily than she expected. After hitting the dock and sinking, she panicked. Instead of calling for help, she thought of a movie she had seen about a ship sinking after hitting an iceberg. She assumed that if she said it hit an iceberg, it would create a sense of urgency. Since Hollywood is based in Los Angeles, she figured there must be icebergs nearby. With this bizarre logic, she claimed the cruiser had struck an iceberg to elicit panic. Abigail hoped that by causing me to worry, she could exact some form of revenge. I understood why Abigail lied about hitting an iceberg, but her reasoning was absurd. Afterward, Scott gave both Abigail and Victoria a stern reprimand. Fortunately, no other boats were damaged, so covering the repair costs resolved the immediate issue. But now I was left wondering why I had to work for a river cleaning company. Abigail protested. "In Birmingham, repair costs are always high. There are other jobs available." "Well, you wanted to be on a boat, right? This river cleaning company allows you to do that." "I wanted to be on a cruiser, not just any boat." In the end, Abigail found herself working at the river cleaning company, picking up trash from the boat. It was hard work, but at least it involved being on a boat, which was her initial desire. For me, there was a small silver lining. Victoria also started working. As a result, Abigail contacted me less frequently, which was a relief. While I want to maintain a good relationship with them, it was important that they focus on working and earning money, especially given the situation with Taylor. Otherwise, I'd be in a tough spot. After all, I still haven't had a chance to enjoy that $3 million cruiser myself. "I wanted kids, but it's your fault I never had them. You're the one who's broken." My husband of 20 years spat those words at me, and in that moment, I knew our marriage was over. He was already fantasizing about a new life, oblivious to the cruelty of his actions. But perhaps fate was watching, for something soon happened to him. "My name is Lisa, and I'm 45 years old, working as a secretary at a law firm. My husband and I have been together for nearly 2 decades, living a modest life. Just the two of us. We always dreamed of having children, but it never happened. The doctors said the problem was mostly with me. I underwent countless treatments while juggling work, draining myself physically, emotionally, and financially. But despite all the effort, nothing changed. By the time I turned 40, I couldn't take it anymore. My husband was desperate for a child and pushed me to continue the treatments, but I was at my breaking point. The pain was too much, and our finances were being depleted. The future was daunting. They say you need at least $200,000 saved for retirement, and we were just watching our money slip away. "Let's stop the treatments and focus on us," I suggested one day. "We could save money and travel, enjoy our life as a couple." Though reluctant, my husband agreed. From then on, we tried to embrace a child-free life. But every time I saw children on TV or received a holiday card featuring a smiling family, a wave of regret washed over me. Even now, 5 years after stopping the treatments, I still carry the guilt of not being able to have children. Then, one day, I decided to attend a school reunion, the first in about 10 years. My husband encouraged me to go, so I treated it like a mini vacation and booked a room near the venue for an overnight stay. It struck me that I hadn't done anything for myself since our marriage. My life had revolved around infertility treatments. Maybe I deserved a little indulgence. At the reunion, I reconnected with old friends. "Lisa, it's been ages. How have you been? You look like you've slimmed down," one friend remarked. It was true, I'd lost about 22 pounds over the past decade. "I'm so jealous. Since getting married and having kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds. Even light-hearted comments like that could sting. "Lisa, do you have any kids?" "No, we couldn't. It's just the two of us," I replied. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up a sensitive topic." "It's alright, let's just enjoy ourselves tonight," I said, trying to keep the mood light. During our conversation, one classmate shared a shocking story. "My son nearly fell victim to a marriage scam recently." "A scam?" I was startled. "Yes, a woman convinced him they were getting married and asked to borrow $20,000, but when he couldn't pay, he came to us for help. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman disappeared without a trace." "That's terrifying. It's hard to believe people can be so deceitful." The reunion continued, but her story stuck with me. A marriage scam, something so close to home, was unnerving. Eventually, the night drew to a close. I skipped the after-party and returned to my hotel, enjoying a quiet drink by myself, reflecting on how much had changed. As I settled into my hotel room, I realized I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. Surely, he'd still be awake. I dialed home, but the phone just kept ringing. No answer. I tried again, but there was still no response. Maybe he had gone to bed early. I would be back home tomorrow, so it wasn't a big deal. But a nagging feeling crept in, a sense of unease I couldn't shake. Was it just a woman's intuition? Something felt off. In the weeks that followed, my husband's behavior began to change. He started coming home late on weekdays, often stumbling in, reeking of alcohol. "Hey, I'm back," he would slur as he kicked off his shoes and collapsed on the living room floor. "You're really drunk again. Are you alright?" I'd ask, concerned. "Shut up, I'm home, aren't I? Show some respect." "Respect? For what, exactly?" I bit my tongue as I picked up his discarded socks and shirt, wondering what had happened to the man I married. "Alyssa is cute, isn't she? If only you were as young as Alyssa," he mumbled one night before passing out. Alyssa? Who the hell is Alyssa? And what did he mean? If only you were young. By the time I gathered my thoughts, he was already snoring. Could he be cheating on me? The uneasy feeling from that night at the hotel started turning into something more, a gnawing suspicion. No, I told myself, my husband isn't that kind of man. It must be drunken rambling. But the doubt lingered. Weekends became just as troubling. My husband would leave early in the morning, returning only late at night, and always in the same drunken state. "I'll be back later," he'd say. "Take care," I'd reply, but I was far from reassured. As this became a weekly routine, I couldn't stay silent any longer. "You've been going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay financially?" I asked one night, trying to keep the concern out of my voice. "Mind your own business. It's my money, and I'll do what I want with it. I'm using the savings from before we got married. But we need to save for the future, for our old age. We could end up in trouble if we don't." "Then you save," he snapped. "I've spent so much on treatments." "That's because you're defective," he shot back. Even in his drunken state, the cruelty of his words stunned me. I began to see just how much my husband had changed. Had I become more submissive since we stopped the treatments? His disdain for me was growing, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. "Since you can't give me children, you should at least focus on loving me more." With those words, I felt my affection for him begin to fade. The man who once supported me through the grueling treatments was now selfish and indulgent. Where had that caring husband gone? Could he ever come back? What did our marriage even mean after 20 years together? I began to question everything. But then, something unexpected happened. "Lisa, we need to talk." I walked into the living room after work to find my husband sitting on the sofa, looking unusually serious. What is it? Why so formal? I want a divorce, he said bluntly. What? You can't be serious. Why would you say that out of the blue? The thought of divorce had never crossed my mind. Sure, I knew we needed to reassess our relationship, but ending our marriage, I hadn't even considered it. Was this something he had been planning without me knowing? A divorce? Where is this coming from? I asked, desperate for an explanation. We've been together for 20 years. Let's talk this through. But he just looked at me with disdain. Are you really that clueless? He said with a heavy sigh, his eyes filled with contempt. What are you talking about? For 20 years, all I've wanted was to be a father, but thanks to being stuck with someone as defective as you, I've been denied that chance. Have you ever thought about how that feels? He slammed his fist on the table, his voice dripping with arrogance. That's not fair. We agreed together to stop the treatments. You were part of that decision. I never truly agreed. I've always wanted a child. Why hadn't he said anything back then? My eyes welled up with tears, a mix of sadness and frustration overtaking me. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, there's nothing more to discuss, he said, shoving the papers across the table with a smug smile. I've already decided to remarry. What? Remarry? Yes, to a 20-year-old woman. A woman? Are you telling me you've been having an affair? It's not an affair. I'm planning to marry her as soon as we're divorced, he declared with twisted satisfaction. A 20-year-old woman marrying my husband? The whole situation felt unreal. Alyssa, she's sweet, young, and everything you're not. She'll make the perfect wife. Alyssa, that was the name he'd mentioned before. My suspicions had been right all along. A strange sense of satisfaction crept in, but there was no time for self-congratulation. Then, my husband showed me a picture of his precious Alyssa. As I looked at it closely, I nearly burst out laughing. This had to be a joke. Was he seriously falling for this? I fought to keep my expression neutral, knowing it wasn't time to reveal the truth just yet. I quickly composed myself and met his gaze. So, you really want a child that badly? I asked, feigning more distress than I truly felt. Yes, because you can't give me one. There's nothing more to be done, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you? Well, I suppose there's no other choice, I replied, pretending to be more upset than I actually was. Initially, I was hurt when he first mentioned divorce, but now, seeing the depths of his stupidity, I realized it was the right decision. It was clear I needed to leave this man sooner rather than later. It almost felt like divine intervention was guiding me. I signed the divorce papers without hesitation and walked away from him. He would regret this soon enough, of that, I was certain. All I had to do was wait and see. Fast forward a year after the divorce. Lisa, please help me. A disheveled man approached me as I was heading home from work. Excuse me, do I know you? I asked, genuinely struggling to recognize him. It's me, Lisa, I need your help. It was my ex-husband. Long time no see, I said, surprised by how much he had changed. His cheeks were hollow, and his clothes were worn and shabby. Please, just introduce me to one of your firm's lawyers. I can't just do that without reason. It was obvious from his appearance that he was in serious financial trouble, but I never imagined he would deteriorate so drastically in just a year. If it's your first time, the consultation is free, but if you want to hire them, you'll need to pay for their services. I don't have that kind of money, please, I'm begging you. What happened? I asked, feeling a pang of pity as I led him to a nearby cafe. Well, actually. Before he could finish, I interrupted him. Did that girl, Alyssa, run off? How did you know? Just as I suspected. When he had shown me a picture of Alyssa a year ago, I had recognized her instantly. She looked exactly like the girl who had conned a classmate's son at a reunion. My classmate had been furious, showing everyone a picture of the girl and warning them to be careful. I think her name was Sally, and she was supposedly around 22. Of course, the age and name were likely fake. A con artist wouldn't use her real identity. Of course, you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? I guess you could say I had a hunch, but what exactly happened? When I pressed my ex-husband for details, this is what he revealed. He met a woman named Alyssa about a year ago at a nightclub. My ex, who had always been desperate to have children, must have shared his frustrations with her during their conversations. That's when Alyssa promised, "I can give you the child you've always wanted." Their relationship quickly intensified. My ex started frequenting the club almost every weekday, and on weekends, he would take Alyssa out on dates, then return to the club afterward. Over time, he drained $10,000 from the savings he had accumulated during his bachelor days. But Alyssa was different. He insisted. She wasn't like the typical club girls you hear about. She didn't ask for expensive things or fancy dinners. She was just happy to drink with me at the club. She didn't care about designer bags or jewelry. She was content just being with me. She was hardworking and sincere. Since we had agreed not to touch each other's pre-marriage savings, I had no idea how much he was spending. I assumed it was his money, so he could do as he pleased. Little did I know he was squandering it on her. Then Alyssa's true intentions came to light. "I want to marry you," she told him, "but I have debts, around $20,000. I need to pay them off first." Without hesitation, my ex-husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her. They moved in together immediately after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her work at the club and was rarely home. Shortly after, she quit her job and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so naive? I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and embarrassment for having been married to such a fool for 20 years. "Did you get a promissory note?" I asked. "A what?" My ex-husband looked at me, completely bewildered. "You lent her money, didn't you? Did you at least get a written agreement?" "We were supposed to be a couple, so I didn't think it was necessary." "Really? So, you just handed her the money without any guarantee? Is that what I did?" "In that case, it seems you simply donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of the goodness of your heart." This woman was clearly a pro. In situations like this, when a gift exceeds $11,000 in a single year, a gift tax is imposed, and the recipient may be liable for it. But Alyssa was smart. She likely split the money across 2 different years to avoid triggering the tax. The reason my ex thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew exactly what she was doing. "So, what should I do?" my ex-husband asked, desperation evident in his voice. "I don't know, maybe you should consult a lawyer, but be prepared, it'll cost you." His shoulders slumped at the suggestion. "I've exhausted all my savings from before we were married. The woman I loved has run off. I can't even tell my company the marriage is off after boasting about my upcoming nuptials. I bragged about having a younger wife." While I thought this was his own mess to deal with, seeing him in such a wretched state made it hard to be completely unsympathetic. "Lisa, it's my fault. Please, come back to me. I realized after you left that you were the only one who truly cared about me. I don't want kids anymore. I'll let you live your life as you wish. You must have been lonely too, right?" Does he really believe I still have feelings for him? Our relationship was over in my mind half a year ago. I needed to confront him with the truth. "You know, it's been a year. This sudden change of heart seems a bit late, don't you think? Lisa, are you really going to abandon me? It was you who pushed for the divorce in the first place. Lisa, you're the only person I can rely on." Seeing him so drained and defeated, I decided to show a bit of mercy. "All right then, how about I call a lawyer friend of mine for you?" "Thank you, Lisa, I knew I could count on you." With tears in his eyes, he seemed genuinely relieved. The lawyer I called was Mr. Johnson from my company. "John, over here," I greeted. "Lisa, who's this?" "He's an acquaintance in a bit of a predicament." "Nice to meet you, I'm Johnson." My ex looked puzzled by our familiarity. "You see, we've been seeing each other for the past 6 months. What advice do you need?" I explained. My ex appeared dazed as he processed the information. Well, I think that'll be enough for today." Suddenly snapping back to reality, he quickly left the coffee shop. Ultimately, he couldn't afford a lawyer and had to face the consequences on his own. Rumor has it that his company is abuzz with news of his unfortunate predicament, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. It's a small world. One of his colleagues happened to be at the same cafe, overhearing the entire exchange. I've heard that he's now desperately trying to find a new partner, afraid of facing old age alone. Who was that guy? Mr. Johnson asked later, clearly curious. I explained the entire situation to him, feeling a bit guilty for dragging him into my drama. I'm sorry for involving you in all this. The truth is, I understand, Lisa, it sounds like you've been through quite a lot. The story about me dating Mr. Johnson was completely fabricated. I'd asked him to help me out with the ruse. Sorry for the trouble. No need to apologize, he replied with a reassuring smile. I'm glad I could help. By the way, do you have any plans for the rest of the day? Excuse me? How about we grab a bite to eat? I was caught off guard by his suggestion and felt a bit flustered. A new beginning in my mid-40s, it didn't seem like such a bad idea. Yes, I'd love to. I couldn't shake the feeling that something exciting was on the horizon. My name is Karen, and I'm 33 years old. I have a wonderful family of 3, my husband William, who is the same age, and our 3-year-old daughter, Evelyn. William comes from an affluent and well-educated family that runs a successful tutoring center. Both of his parents were teachers, and William himself holds a teaching license. Sometimes, I find it hard to believe that I'm part of such a distinguished family. Initially, my parents and friends were concerned about how I'd fit in, but those worries quickly faded. They're genuinely good people, despite my athletic background, which is quite different from theirs. My in-laws welcomed me with open arms. My mother-in-law, in particular, was thrilled to have a daughter. Although I was nervous at first, my cheerful and lively nature helped me to build a strong bond with them. Professionally, I'm a certified arborist, specializing in tree health assessments, pruning, planting, relocation, and consulting. Earning my certification required a lot of hard work, and the job itself is physically demanding. It requires both mental acuity and physical strength, and I've always taken good care of my health to meet those demands. William, who now tutors at the family center, used to be an elementary school teacher. We first met when I visited the school where he worked to discuss the care of the trees on campus. After giving birth to Evelyn, I took some time off and only returned to work last year. With our daughter still being so young, I prioritize my family, and I'm fortunate to have a supportive workplace. However, there are times when I can't make it in time to pick her up. On those occasions, my mother-in-law steps in to help, and William pitches in whenever he can. I truly appreciate the support and have been living a fulfilling life. But there was one person who disrupted my happiness, my sister-in-law, Sarah, who is married to William's older brother, Richard. William is the second oldest of 3 brothers. The youngest is still single. Sarah, who mostly manages the accounting and administrative tasks at the tutoring center, is a housewife and mother to a 5-year-old boy, whom she seems keen on getting into a prestigious private elementary school. From the moment I first met Sarah at my in-laws' house, I could tell she was different, petite, always impeccably dressed, with perfectly styled hair. She seemed like the picture of sophistication. I admired her outward poise, but it didn't take long for me to realize that she had 2 faces. One day, while we were helping my mother-in-law in the kitchen, my impression of her completely changed. My mother-in-law had just stepped out when Sarah suddenly turned to me with a sharp look. Can't you do something about your appearance? I was taken aback. What do you mean? You're always wearing clothes that look worn out and dirty. Don't you realize you stand out in the worst way? It's embarrassing. Well, I find these clothes comfortable, and I have to chase after my daughter all the time. I have a child too, you know, she sighed, clearly irritated, before quickly reverting to her sweet demeanor as my mother-in-law returned. What were you 2 talking about? My mother-in-law asked. Oh, just about raising kids, Sarah replied with a smile, her tone completely different. It amazed me how she could change her voice in an instant, as if she had a sensor that activated when my mother-in-law was near. My mother-in-law glanced at me, as if to ask if that was true, and I nodded. Though I wasn't intimidated by Sarah, I couldn't just brush off her sarcasm either. I didn't want to burden my mother-in-law with my concerns, so I tried to let it go, but Sarah continued to undermine me whenever we crossed paths. Once, while I was on a work errand, I ran into Sarah, who was chatting with a couple of her mom friends. I greeted her politely, but I could tell she wasn't pleased. Later that night, she called me at home. What were you thinking? She snapped, her tone aggressive from the start. Excuse me, what are you talking about? Earlier today. Don't ever approach me in public dressed like that again. Your work outfit was a disgrace. I can't believe you'd go out looking like that. Didn't you see us? You should know better than to show up like that around people who are preparing their kids for private school entrance exams. We live in a different world from you, and you embarrassed me. She continued her tirade, making it clear that her issue wasn't just with my clothes, but with me as a person. Well, I was working, so I was in my work clothes, I explained. I don't care about that, just don't approach me when we meet outside, okay? It's embarrassing. But isn't that a bit odd? We're family, after all. That's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. You don't fit in with the family. To be honest, I've never considered you a real sister-in-law. With that, she abruptly hung up, leaving me in shock. Her call felt like a deliberate attempt to vent her frustrations. She often complained about me at family gatherings, but she only reveals her true feelings when we're alone. She prides herself on being fashionable and high-class, which is fine, but her need to belittle me simply because I don't match her standards is baffling. Yes, she always dresses elegantly and flaunts accessories, but why the need for so many? I wonder if her quiet husband, my brother-in-law, even knows about this side of her. It's just who she is. I kept this to myself from my brother-in-law and mother-in-law, but I did share it with William as it was becoming stressful. Huh, that doesn't sound like her, he said, dismissing it at first. A few days later, my mother-in-law called with details about a family dinner for my father-in-law's upcoming birthday. She usually doesn't interfere with her son's households but insists on family gatherings for special occasions like birthdays, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. This time, it was to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday, and we had reserved a private room at his favorite steakhouse. It's our first time going there as a family, but it's a fantastic place. I hope you're looking forward to it, she said. Oh, I am, thank you, I replied, genuinely excited, though I couldn't help but dread seeing Sarah again. You don't sound very enthusiastic. Is work keeping you busy? Oh, no, I'm fine, I quickly reassured her. Uh-oh, did my voice give me away? I thought, feeling a bit guilty. Karen, if there's anything bothering you, please let me know, okay? We're managing just fine. Even when work runs late, you help us out. I really appreciate everything you do. It's not about your family, she said, leaving me puzzled. The weekend arrived, and so did the dinner party for my father-in-law's birthday, a chance to show our appreciation. Determined not to let Sarah's negativity affect me, I arrived early at the restaurant. When I walked into the private room, I was relieved to find that my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and brother-in-law hadn't arrived yet. I had come early to avoid keeping my father-in-law waiting and to minimize my time with Sarah. However, my brother-in-law and Sarah arrived just after me. Hello. Hi, Karen, Richard, good to see you. After exchanging greetings, William and Richard started chatting. Sarah, however, immediately approached me, scrutinizing my outfit with a critical eye. What are you wearing? For such a nice restaurant, you could have dressed up a bit more. How many times do I have to tell you? The familiar, demeaning comments began, this time in a lower, more insidious tone. Is this really the time or place for this? I forced a tight smile, trying to stay calm. I chose this dress with the occasion in mind. Do you think it's inappropriate? I mean, it's not from a high-end brand or anything. It's surprising you'd show up in such a cheap outfit, and with your broad shoulders. The dress doesn't suit you at all. Your accessories are just a wedding ring. You never wear nail polish, and your hands look rough. I can't wear nail polish for my job. It would be impractical with all the woodworking and gardening I do. My hands get rough because of my work and household chores, but I take pride in them. They reflect my hard work. I couldn't hold back. What do you mean? Are you implying I don't do housework? My retort seemed to make her even angrier. Her voice grew louder. I can't stand you. I've tried to be helpful, but you never listen. It's unbearable to be associated with someone as unrefined as you. I realized my sister-in-law was losing control of her emotions and the situation. Today is a celebration for my father-in-law. Please don't ruin it. What? You're the one ruining everything. You don't belong in this family. I can't dine with someone as shabby as you. Just go home. Wait, what? I have to leave. This dinner was organized by my mother-in-law. If anyone is ruining it, it's clearly her. I'll deal with your complaints later, but right now, I decided to stand my ground. Not now. Don't talk back to me, didn't you hear me? I said, go home, actually, leave this family. As my husband began to approach, alarmed by Sarah's loud outburst, the door to the private room opened. The one who should leave is you. My mother-in-law entered with a calm yet firm demeanor. My father-in-law and their youngest son, John, followed, and my mother-in-law closed the door behind them. What? Sarah's anger faltered as she realized who had just walked in. Her surprise was evident as she stammered. What's going on? Everyone, please take your seats, my mother-in-law said softly but with an authoritative tone that compelled everyone to comply. It seems we need to have a discussion before we can enjoy the birthday celebration. I apologize for this interruption. Seeing my father-in-law nod in agreement, my mother-in-law turned her attention to Sarah. Sarah, what did you say to Karen? Even my usually gentle mother-in-law could be sharply sarcastic when needed. Sarah, flustered, replied, oh, I was just saying I'm looking forward to the meal. Did I misunderstand? I thought I heard you say, get out. Huh, no, it was just a minor argument. I was joking, Sarah said, trying to regain her usual cheerful demeanor despite her agitation. A joke? It seemed like you were the one doing all the talking. Have you been treating Karen like this all along? It was clear my mother-in-law had overheard everything from the door. Bullying? I wasn't bullying her. I was just offering advice on manners and dress, given my role in this family. That didn't come across as advice. Everyone should be free to dress as they like, as long as it's respectful. Karen wasn't dressed inappropriately. But her non-branded clothes and minimal accessories. Enough. My mother-in-law's sharp tone made both me and Sarah jump. The three brothers and my father-in-law, familiar with her temper, calmly distracted the children with picture books. No, Sarah, you're the one who should be embarrassed, I said firmly. I've noticed something was off about you during our gatherings. At first, I thought you were just having friendly chats. Friendly? Sarah's look of desperation was starkly different from her usual demeanor, but I avoided her gaze. For the record, Karen never complained about you. She hoped your behavior would improve with time, but it only seemed to get worse. Well, Sarah stammered, but my mother-in-law's tone grew even sharper. And you always dress beautifully, with so many purses. Yes, that's true. I always make sure to look presentable wherever I go, Sarah replied, trying to regain her composure. Where does the money for all that come from? Just as Sarah thought she might regain control, my mother-in-law's unexpected question left her speechless. That is, of course, from We pay you for helping with tuition and accounting at the tutoring center. Even if my son said you could use that money as you please, it doesn't seem sufficient for all the designer clothes and purses you own. Oh, well, because... Are you using your role in managing the household finances to indulge your own desires? What do you mean? Sarah stuttered. I understood her confusion. I had wondered about their finances myself. I had always seen my brother-in-law as generous, perhaps too trusting in leaving the financial management to Sarah. It was troubling to think he might not keep a close eye on their spending. In a way, I almost felt sorry for him. So, you've been spending money freely. And now you want to send your child to a private school, my mother-in-law continued. You've been saving for that, right? What? You're not expecting us to cover the costs, are you? No, not at all, but he's your adorable grandchild. Which is it? So, she had been planning to rely on my father-in-law and mother-in-law's money all along. Of course, we love our grandchildren, my mother-in-law said. We're willing to support them financially if needed, but only after you leave our home. What? No, there's no need for that. I'll apologize to Karen for asking her to leave. Karen, it was the first time she addressed me by name. You will forgive me, right? We're sisters, after all. Sisters only while you're married to my brother-in-law. My mother-in-law looked at me, indicating that I should continue. Even if it's official, I don't consider you family. I don't think of you as a sister. Sarah was caught off guard, making a distressed noise. And that's not all. You've also been dipping into the funds from the tutoring center. Sarah's face went pale, and she was left speechless. Is that true? I asked, genuinely surprised by my mother-in-law's revelation. I had suspected Sarah might misuse household money, but I hadn't anticipated she would touch the funds from the tutoring center my in-laws operate. You were clever enough to avoid detection for a while, but it eventually came to light. Even Bob, who has managed our accounts for years, was deceived by you. Sarah's face drained of color. You were buying gifts like baskets for our suppliers, thanking teachers, and organizing seminars, all under your charge. The receipts kept piling up. You made excuses that these were for birthday presents or requests from me or my son. No, that's not. What do you mean, not? You bought more than just gift baskets, passing off other items as gifts. This sort of thing never happened before, and Bob trusted you. You told him you were taking part-time lecturers to lunch, but you were actually dining and socializing with your friends. The increasing number of suspicious receipts finally led Bob to come to us. Even before that, my son had started investigating after noticing irregularities. What? You've betrayed the trust of everyone who wanted to believe in you. It seems maintaining your image is more important to you than anything else. It's not me. Sarah's pleas for help from my brother-in-law went unanswered as he looked at her coldly. If what's being said is true, I can't fault him for his reaction. Karen, on the other hand, is different. She might not be into fashion, but she always puts family and work first. Her dedication as a certified arborist is admirable. I'm sure she worked hard for her qualifications. As Sarah stood there, silent and defeated, my mother-in-law turned to speak about me. I felt a tearful warmth rise in my eyes. I respect her for believing that if she wanted to continue working, we should support her. Have you ever seen her work tirelessly, without caring if her clothes get dirty or her hands become calloused, and you have the audacity to mock her? Tears welled up in my eyes as Sarah remained silent, unable to offer any excuses. She simply lowered her head in shame. Our tutoring center might not be as large as major corporations, but we value our teachers and students, and we've earned their trust through our commitment to each individual's needs. What matters most is the people and the relationships we build. You are the one who doesn't belong here. You are the one who needs to leave. My mother-in-law, with her clear and decisive stance, was truly remarkable. After the truth about Sarah's embezzlement came out, she was compelled to leave the family she had tried so hard to impress. Despite my brother-in-law's attempts to discuss things rationally, Sarah refused to admit her wrongs and reacted with anger. Ultimately, she was served with divorce papers and, stripped of any compensation due to the revealed embezzlement, found herself with nothing left. My brother-in-law will retain custody of their son, and with support from my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they will ensure he continues to have a stable life. Sarah, who often put her own needs first, had a strained relationship with her son when things didn't go her way. However, the young boy, comforted by his father and grandparents, seemed reassured by their promises. Although Sarah had wanted him to attend a private school, he wasn't keen on the pressure and now enjoys spending time playing with our daughter. Of course, my husband and I are committed to helping however we can. One relaxed afternoon at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law approached me. I'm really sorry for the discomfort Sarah caused you. We should have noticed it sooner. Not at all. I wasn't very bothered at first, I replied. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to let us know, she said sincerely. Thank you, I responded, reflecting on her words. What's important is people and hearts. Noticing my gaze, my mother-in-law looked at me curiously. It's nothing, I was just thinking how amazing you are. Thank you, but the real credit goes to you for creating such beautiful gardens. Perhaps I'll ask you for help with our flower bed next time. Absolutely, I'd be delighted to help, even if it's just for fun. Just let me know, she said warmly. You should charge her. Mom can be quite particular, my husband joked, and we all laughed together. Value people, cherish hearts. It's a sentiment I'll always remember. I look forward to more moments of joy and laughter with my cherished family in the future. I married the man I loved deeply, and our dream of becoming a married couple finally came true. We even celebrated with the wedding I had always envisioned. Surrounded by the blessings of so many people, I was certain that my parents, watching from heaven, were rejoicing too. But little did I know, a tragedy was looming, one that would shatter everything I held dear. I will never forgive those responsible. I'm determined to make them pay. My name is Mary. When I was 27, Thomas, my boyfriend who was 2 years older, proposed to me, and we got married. I lost my father when I was very young, and my mother passed away from illness 2 years ago. During my darkest moments, Thomas was my rock, supporting me both physically and emotionally. We chose to get married on the anniversary of our 2.5 years together and began our blissful life as newlyweds. Because of Thomas's demanding work schedule, we decided to delay our wedding ceremony until things settled down. On his days off, we would visit the wedding venue and start planning our big day. With the date set, it was time to decide on our guest list. I have an aunt and uncle who have always treated me like their own daughter after my parents passed away. After my father's death, they often brought me home-cooked meals since my mother was constantly busy working. They kept me company when she was away, ensuring I never felt alone. When my mother fell ill, they stepped in to help with all the chores, easing the burden I would have otherwise had to carry alone. Even when her condition worsened, my aunt would comfort me, gently saying, "It's okay, Mary, your mother is going to get better. Just believe and wait." No matter how tough things got, I managed to stay strong because they were always there for me. That's why I wanted them to have the seats of honor among the family at my wedding. To share this with them, I visited their home after some time apart. My aunt greeted me with tears in her eyes, saying, "Mary, congratulations on your marriage." "Thank you, Auntie," I replied, smiling. "I'd love for you both to sit in the family seats at my wedding. Would that be all right?" "Of course," she said, her voice warm with affection. Before bringing out a large box, "Mary, why don't you open it?" Prompted by my aunt, I carefully lifted the lid of the box in front of me. Inside, nestled among soft tissue paper, was a stunning white wedding dress. The gown, crafted from luxurious silk, struck a perfect balance between elegance and charm. The neckline was adorned with delicate, vibrant lace, and the silhouette was skillfully tailored to form a graceful A-line. Tiny, intricate flower embroideries decorated the hem, adding a touch of sweetness. The dress was clearly custom-made, its smaller size indicating it was designed just for me. I fell in love with it instantly. "Wait, what's this?" I asked, surprised. "It's from your mother, my sister," my aunt said gently. "What? Mom made this?" I gasped. My aunt nodded. The dress had been handmade by my mother. Despite battling her illness, she had painstakingly sewn it together, day after day, ensuring it was a perfect fit for my petite frame. My mother had entrusted the dress to my aunt with a final wish: "If Mary ever gets married, please give her this. It's filled with all the love I could pour into it in my last days. Mary, you have to wear this dress at your wedding. Your mother would be so happy," my aunt said, her eyes welling up with tears and her voice tender with emotion. I was deeply moved by her words and the love my mother had put into making this dress. "Thank you, Auntie, you've kept it safe all these years. I promise I'll wear it at my wedding. You have to be there to see me in it," I said, holding the dress close, my heart brimming with happiness. When I returned home, I carefully hung the dress on the wall of my bedroom, where I could see it every day. I was determined to honor my mother by making my wedding a beautiful success, wearing the dress she had lovingly created. That resolve only strengthened with each passing day. But then, disaster struck. One day, after coming home from work, I noticed the dress was no longer hanging on the wall. "What? Where is it?" I cried out in panic, knowing I had left it there. My heart raced as I reached for my phone, ready to call the police. Just then, my husband walked in. "Oh Mary, what's wrong?" he asked, noticing the tears streaming down my face and hurrying over to me. "My dress. It's gone. Someone must have stolen it." "It was right here," I said, my voice shaking with desperation. To my shock, Thomas didn't seem alarmed. Instead, he shrugged and said, "Oh, is that all?" "What do you mean, is that all, Thomas? Do you know something about this?" I asked, my heart sinking. "Of course I do. My sister's getting married soon and needed a dress, so I let her borrow yours," he said casually. "What? You did what?" My husband had lent my wedding dress to his sister without even asking me. He had mentioned the dress to her in passing, and when she asked if she could borrow it, he agreed without hesitation. She had come by while I was at work, using the spare key from our mailbox to let herself in and take it. I was furious. "Are you kidding me? How could you do that without asking me?" I yelled. but Thomas waved off my anger as if it were nothing. Our wedding isn't for a while, so what's the big deal? Besides, she was really happy she didn't have to buy one. She's broke, you know. Happy she didn't have to buy one? That's not the point. That dress was handmade by my mother specifically for me. I told you that, didn't I? It's tailored perfectly to my size. How could you just give it away without even asking me? I was livid, feeling completely disregarded. Calm down, Mary. It's not like the dress is ruined. You can still wear it. So what's the problem? Thomas said, as if he couldn't understand why I was so upset. What's the problem? Are you serious? Your sister is wearing my dress before I do. That's completely wrong. And you know it. I tried to make him see why I was hurt, but instead of apologizing or acknowledging his mistake, Thomas let out an exasperated sigh, dismissing my feelings entirely. Mary, you're being ridiculous. Stop acting like a spoiled child, will you? Ridiculous? Spoiled? You think I'm spoiled for being upset that my sister-in-law is wearing the dress my mother made specifically for me? I couldn't believe how dismissive Thomas was being, completely ignoring how much this meant to me. I've had enough of this. Tomorrow, I'm going to your parents' house to get my wedding dress back from your sister. What? Tomorrow? That's when my sister's fiancé and his parents are visiting. Don't cause a scene. Cause a scene? You've got some nerve. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't care what anyone says. There's no way I'm letting your sister wear that dress. The next day, I took time off work and headed straight to my in-laws' house. As I approached, I could hear the sounds of lively conversation spilling out from the open front door. Quietly, I stepped inside and listened. A man's voice I didn't recognize echoed through the house. Wow, did you make this dress yourself? It's incredible. Cynthia's voice responded modestly. Oh, it's really nothing. She was showing off my mother's handcrafted wedding dress to her fiancé and his parents as if it were her own. The sight of it stopped me in my tracks. But I was determined to have my dream wedding and bring my vision to life, so I ended up making the dress myself, Cynthia said, her words causing something inside me to shatter. Her dream dress. What a cruel joke. That dress was something my mother painstakingly crafted with love just for me. Before I even realized it, I was already moving toward them. I marched straight through the entrance and seized the wedding dress from Cynthia's hands. This is mine, I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. Everyone turned to me, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. Whoa, Mary, what's going on? My father-in-law stammered, clearly flustered. Ignoring him, I fixed my gaze on Cynthia and laid everything bare. This dress was made by my mother for me. Your daughter stole it from my room without my permission. What? The room fell silent as everyone stared at me, wide-eyed, except for Cynthia, who had gone pale. Cynthia, is that true? Her fiancé asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Cynthia, desperate, tried to deny it. No, it's not like that. I really did make this dress myself. Seeing that she was trying to spin more lies, I challenged her directly. Then why don't you try it on? My mother made this dress to fit my specific measurements. There's no way it will fit you. I continued, you're taller and more toned than I am. Cynthia, this dress was tailored to my petite frame, so there's no way it'll suit you. Just then, Thomas burst into the room, his face red with anger. Cynthia must have called him. Mary, what the hell are you doing? Are you trying to ruin my sister's wedding? Ruin her wedding? What are you talking about? If anything, she's the one who's trying to ruin mine. I shot back, incredulous at his reaction, but then he said something that truly stunned me. Shut up, we cancelled our wedding, so just give the dress to my sister. What? Cancelled? I repeated, trying to process what he'd just said. That's right, Thomas insisted, pushing forward. Cynthia said she was tight on money, so we gave her the $50,000 we saved for our wedding. Since we're not having one anymore, what do we need the dress for? You lent out my dress without asking, cancelled our wedding, and gave away the $50,000 we saved. Are you out of your mind? My voice trembled with disbelief and anger. To him, our marriage was something so insignificant. In that moment, I felt my love for him begin to fade. As I fell silent, Thomas mistook it for submission and, thinking he'd won, started to speak again. Now, hand that dress back to my sister immediately. You're fine with canceling the wedding, right? Fine, let's just get a divorce then. What? My husband's shocked expression was almost comical. Did you hear me? I said divorce. I'm done with someone who can so easily trample over my feelings without a second thought. Wait a minute, why are we talking about divorce? That's absurd, he stammered, clearly panicking. Any rational person would have seen this coming, he was just too blind to realize it. Well, that settles it, I turned to leave, clutching the dress tightly, but Cynthia grabbed the fabric with all her might. In an instant, the dress tore, leaving it in tatters. As I stared at the ruined gown, Cynthia and Thomas burst into laughter, unable to contain themselves. Serves you right, Cynthia sneered. This is what happens when you mess with me. Yeah, really, Thomas chimed in. If you had just lent her the dress quietly, none of this would have happened. You brought this on yourself, Mary. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just from the destruction of the dress, but from the sheer cruelty of their actions. Canceling the wedding was one thing, but this dress was something I'd wanted to cherish for my entire life. And now, thanks to these heartless people. Suddenly, Cynthia's fiancé stood up, his voice low and deliberate. I guess we're done too, then. Everyone froze. Wait, what? You're breaking off the engagement over this? Cynthia's voice was frantic, disbelief etched across her face. Why? She pleaded, but her fiancé's glare cut her off. Why? Isn't it obvious? I can't marry someone who would do something so vile without a second thought. There's no way. His parents, who had been quietly observing, nodded in agreement, their disapproval of Cynthia's actions evident. Well, that's the end of this engagement, her fiancé said, making his way toward the door with his parents. Cynthia, in a panic, tried to stop them. Wait, you can't be serious, calling off the engagement over something like this? Mom, Dad, you agree with me, right? But her parents remained silent, their faces hard with disappointment. Her father finally spoke, his voice filled with rage. Get out, you're a disgrace. Even Cynthia, usually so full of confidence, began to sob under the weight of her father's words. This is too much, you're all being so cruel. Stop crying, her father snapped. I didn't raise a fool like you, you're not my daughter anymore. But, Cynthia looked at him through her tears, hoping for some shred of mercy. Just then, Thomas, who had been silent, stepped forward, trying to shield his sister from the full brunt of their father's anger. Dad, Mom, please calm down, there's no need to be so harsh on Cynthia. You too, Thomas. What? My husband stared at his father in disbelief. You're no better, how could you disregard Mary's feelings like that? Get out of this house with your sister, you foolish son. My husband stood there, stunned, never expecting to be disowned as well. His mouth hung open in shock. My mother-in-law approached me, bowing her head in apology. I'm so sorry, Mary, we were told that the dress was handmade by our daughter, and we just believed it. No, it's okay, I replied softly, but I can't continue living with Thomas anymore. That's understandable, it's our daughter's fault, you should live your life without worrying about any of this. Her words struck a chord in me. My in-laws had always been kind to me, and I felt a pang of guilt that things had escalated to this point, but I knew deep down that I couldn't stay with Thomas any longer. Mary, I'm really sorry, let's have a proper wedding, just don't file for divorce yet. My husband's tone shifted instantly, desperation creeping in now that he'd been disowned, but there was no way I'd return to a man who had shown such weakness and disrespect. I'll live my own life, I can be happy without you. Hearing this, my husband collapsed to his knees. I thanked my in-laws for their kindness and left their home. I packed my belongings and went to my aunt's house, where she welcomed me warmly. Though surprised by the sudden turn of events, she understood my decision and supported me fully. As for the torn dress, my aunt skillfully mended it, restoring my mother's creation to its original beauty. After that, I filed for divorce and requested alimony. Since my ex-husband had secretly given our wedding funds to his sister, I was able to secure a bit more in the settlement. My ex-husband and sister-in-law, both disowned by their parents, were now living together in the house we once shared. Cynthia, who had planned on becoming a housewife, had already quit her job and was now unemployed, leaving my ex-husband to shoulder all the financial burdens. If I ever have another chance to marry, I'll make sure to choose my partner carefully, and when that day comes, I'll walk down the aisle in my mother's handmade wedding dress. ready for a truly wonderful wedding. My name is Lauren, and I'm a 36-year-old woman working from home. My husband, Daniel, and I have been married for 3 years. At the time of our marriage, we were both 33 and eager to start a family, so we decided to explore fertility treatments. The results were reassuring, there were no issues. Despite this, we struggled to conceive and were on the verge of giving up. Just when we were losing hope, Daniel remarked, "But my mom and sister, we need to have a successor." I sighed at his comment. While Daniel is generally a good husband, he tends to be quite the mama's boy, always aligning himself with his mother's wishes. I've never had the best relationship with my mother-in-law. Daniel is the eldest son and has a younger sister who left home early due to their mother's favoritism. Daniel's job requires frequent transfers, and when we married, he was working close to his parents' home. He had warned me that relocation might be a possibility, but I was willing to move anywhere as long as we were together. We rented a house near his parents, but my mother-in-law frequently visited on Daniel's days off. Even while I was working from home, she'd find excuses to drop by, often interfering with my work and criticizing my housekeeping skills. Her constant presence and comments about needing a grandchild, especially a boy, were overwhelming. Despite my attempts to address this with Daniel, he would only respond with, "My mom just wants to get along with you, Lauren," which felt overly simplistic and unhelpful. I was initially attracted to Daniel's optimism, a trait I lack, and believed we balanced each other well. However, this issue created a significant rift. 6 months ago, Daniel's job transfer was finalized, and we moved away from his parents' house to a new place. This new location is further from my parents' home, but it's in a thriving area, similar to a regional city in Nebraska, with good public transportation and infrastructure. It's less than an hour's drive from my parents' house. Since the move, my stress has diminished significantly. I can now focus on my work, and life has become more comfortable. Recently, I discovered that I'm pregnant. Daniel and I embraced each other with joy. Although I have some concerns due to my age, this pregnancy is the fulfillment of a long-held dream. When we shared the news of our baby with Daniel's parents, my mother-in-law immediately asked, "It's a boy, right?" Even though Daniel explained that we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted it had to be a boy. When our baby turned out to be a girl, my mother-in-law called me privately, while Daniel was away, and said, "You're really useless. What did you marry into this family for?" Overwhelmed and emotionally unstable, I broke down in tears. When Daniel came home and saw me crying, he got angry. Upon hearing what had happened, he shouted, "Are you saying my mom is wrong?" This only made me cry harder. Despite this, Daniel continues to be a caring husband who helps with household chores. As long as his mother isn't involved, I managed to safely deliver the baby, and a month later, we returned home. When Daniel picked me up from my hometown, I was surprised to find my mother-in-law waiting at our house. I hadn't expected her to visit, but Daniel cheerfully announced, "My mom came to help." While Daniel was in another room calming our daughter, my mother-in-law pulled out a cake from the refrigerator. "This is to celebrate your childbirth," she said. "I'm sure you didn't get to enjoy any good food while you were out in the countryside." Her tone was irritating, but I tried to overlook it. She handed me the cake box, saying, "This cake cost $500. I was stunned. I had never heard of such an expensive cake. Curious, I opened the box, but was immediately disappointed. The cake's whipped cream was dried out, and the fruit topping consisted of canned oranges. It was clear that this cake did not live up to its supposed $500 price tag. I love sweets and usually appreciate any cake, but this one was a letdown. The situation escalated when my mother-in-law, noticing my reaction, grinned and asked, "So, how's the $500 cake?" I lost my temper, threw the cake and box into the trash, and demanded, "Please leave." My husband, hearing the commotion, rushed into the room. Before I could explain, my mother-in-law was already crying to him. "Lauren is being so mean." She pointed at the trash can, and Daniel's anger flared. "What the hell did you do? That cake was something my mom went through a lot of trouble to make." In the heat of the moment, my mother-in-law added, "Yes, that's right, I made that cake, so it's worth $500. I replied, "Ah, so that's what it was. There's no way that cake was worth $500. Even if it were priced at $50 or even $5, I wouldn't buy it." Everything suddenly clicked into place. No bakery would ever produce such a disrespectful cake. As I processed the situation, my husband shouted, "Lauren, apologize to Mom." It seemed that no matter what, he always sided with his mother. In a daze, I heard our daughter crying from the other room, a sound I hadn't anticipated since I thought she was asleep. My priority shifted immediately, and I rushed to her. Amid the noise from the other side of the door, my daughter needed me most. After finally calming her down, I returned to the living room to find a note from Daniel and his mother. It read that they had gone out to eat and that I should reflect on my actions. I was stunned. The thought of running to my parents crossed my mind, but I hesitated, unsure if it was the right thing to do. With nowhere else to turn, I glanced at the trash can where I had thrown the cake. It sat untouched, just as I had left it. On impulse, I decided to take a photo. When I called my parents and told them everything, my father agreed to come pick me up immediately. I felt a pang of regret for leaving my newborn daughter behind, but moving was better than staying in that toxic environment. My father arrived first and began loading our things into his car. Just as he was finishing, Daniel and my mother-in-law came home, looking shocked to find my father there. Their surprise quickly turned to anger when they saw him with our belongings. "Where are you going? Running back to your parents again? You always flee when things go wrong," Daniel snapped, his words harsher than usual. It was clear he had been drinking, his face was flushed, and he reeked of alcohol. Seeing his condition pushed me over the edge. "You went out drinking, leaving your wife and newborn daughter at home. I couldn't stand being in the same space as you right now, so I turned to my parents." My mother-in-law, also smelling of alcohol, added, "It's good riddance to a daughter-in-law like you." Her comments only furthered my frustration. "Fine, as you wish. I'll take my daughter and leave. Enjoy your time alone with my husband," I said. Daniel looked bewildered, but I ignored him and got into my father's car. My father remained silent, clearly trying to control his emotions. The next day, my husband called me, sounding confused. "Where are you? I was surprised to find you gone when I woke up." I sighed. "I forgot that you tend to forget things when you drink. Don't you remember? You left me and our daughter at home to go out with your mother, and then came back drunk. After how we were treated, I couldn't stay." While Daniel's voice was full of surprise and fluster, I could hear my mother-in-law's voice faintly in the background, anger from the previous day still simmering. I said, "So your mother is staying over?" I refuse to return to a home where someone so rude is present. "What do you mean?" Daniel's voice dropped in tone. "She might be your mother, but to me, she's a stranger. I'm exhausted from childbirth and simply can't deal with her right now. Do you realize she was the main cause of our infertility issues? Her constant visits and stress were unbearable. I managed to get pregnant quickly once she stopped coming around." I was relieved not to see her face, but now that I've returned home with our daughter, there she is again. I know I'm saying hurtful things, but I can't help it. Daniel's voice raised in frustration. "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. I responded, "What?" as if in disbelief. Then I added coldly, "The reason I'm here with our child is because of your mother's behavior." Daniel sounded perplexed. "What? What are you talking about? Your mother didn't want a daughter. She's always said that, right? She wanted us to have a son." I didn't realize she was so serious until I saw that cake. "What cake?" "The cake. Didn't you notice the chocolate plate?" I had hit the mark. The trash can where I had thrown away the cake was still as it was from yesterday. I instructed Daniel to check the kitchen trash can. "There's nothing in here." "Did she dispose of the evidence during the night? Ask your mother what was written on the chocolate plate and where she threw it." I heard the exchange on the other end as Daniel's mother denied any knowledge of the chocolate plate and refused to reveal where it was discarded. "So what does Daniel say?" "She's denying knowing anything about the plate." Daniel sounded unsure and hesitant. "Right? It would be terrible if you had to face the plate's message. It's likely she got rid of it before you saw it." Daniel's voice grew darker as he realized the situation. Amidst his confusion, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. "Why don't you hurry up and come home? Tell her to entertain me. She's a really useless daughter-in-law." At her remark, it seemed Daniel was finally trying to manage his mother's demands. "I'm going to hang up now and send a text. Maybe you and your mother should read it together. Contact me again when you're ready to talk." I said before ending the call. I quickly sent all the photos of the cake and the chocolate plate to my husband. Within 30 minutes, he called back, saying he would come over immediately. I stopped him. My father-in-law should be arriving soon. Stay where you are, I instructed before hanging up. In reality, my father had been so infuriated by my husband's behavior the previous day that he contacted my in-laws. He reported everything to my father-in-law, who, unaware of the situation, had apologized profusely and said he would speak to my husband. By evening, my husband and his parents arrived at my parents' house. As soon as he arrived, my husband bowed deeply and apologized. I'm not aware of what's been happening or what my mother has said to you. I had no idea. Seeing his seemingly contrite demeanor, I felt a coldness settle over me. Isn't it a bit late to claim ignorance? We discussed these issues before we moved. Despite that, you sided with your mother, insisting she was just trying to connect with me and did nothing to address her behavior. My husband's face grew pale. And you always said your mother was fixated on us having a son. Are you planning to always cater to her demands? Since you've clearly chosen your mother over your wife, maybe you don't need me after all. Desperate, he clung to me. That's not true. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for any of this. If that's the case, then what did you mean? I shot back. He was left speechless, his gaze dropping. In my mind, I thought, Daniel, you've chosen your mother over your own wife and daughter, a mother obsessed with her eldest son and a husband who can't break free from her influence. It's no wonder your sister left home early. At that moment, Daniel retorted, I'm not a mama's boy. I care about you too. Then could you truly cut ties with your mother? I challenged. He fell silent. As I sighed, my mother-in-law, who had been brought here by my father-in-law, shouted, how can you say such a thing? Daniel and I are mother and son. We can never sever our ties. His father tried to calm her down, but she continued to protest. To be honest, I never really liked you. I wanted a younger wife for Daniel. Is that so? In that case, I'll divorce you right now. I have the papers ready. If we divorce, we can go our separate ways. At this, my husband's face turned ashen as he looked at me in shock. I refused to maintain any relationship with someone who would write such horrible messages on a cake plate. I said this as I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the picture of the plate, which read, take your daughter and leave. Upon seeing this, my father-in-law, who seemed to be unaware of the full situation, turned pale and yelled at his wife, what have you done to your own daughter-in-law? I was taken aback. It seemed that my mother-in-law had previously served a birthday cake to her own daughter with the message, I don't need a daughter, written on it, leading to their estrangement. It was clear she harbored a deep-seated resentment towards women. Perhaps she felt that excluding the women in her life would bring her more attention. Her son, Daniel, was clearly following in her footsteps. When I presented the divorce papers to my husband, he started making excuses. We've just had a child. We shouldn't be getting a divorce over this. My mom went too far this time, but she was just jealous. Try to understand. Is that really why you came here? I thought you'd tell me you were cutting ties with your mother and coming back to me. I'm never going back to that house. At this, my father-in-law, who had been silently fuming, spoke up. Daniel, sign the divorce papers. I've had enough of this family. When I get home, I'm divorcing your mother as well. What? His mother spun around in shock at his unexpected declaration. I've considered it before, but I always thought it was too late to divorce and that patience was required. But now, seeing how you're treating another woman the same way, I've reached my breaking point. Sign the papers and leave. Reluctantly, my husband signed the divorce papers under his father's directive. As a form of compensation, I received around $10,000 from my father-in-law. Initially, I hesitated, but he insisted it would be deducted from his wife's assets, so I accepted gratefully. My ex-in-laws indeed went through with their divorce. His mother, who had not worked since their marriage, lost all her money from the property settlement after investing it in a dubious cryptocurrency scheme. Meanwhile, I receive monthly child support from Daniel and am raising our daughter with my parents' help. I'm thrilled to see our daughter growing up and thriving.